So we're so excited to get started today. We've got some great presenters, and I'll introduce them in a second. So we've launched at Advanced CTE a 4-part webinar series really digging into how to communicate effectively about career technical education. If you're unfamiliar with Advanced CTE, we've been around almost 100 years. We support state CTE directors and state leaders of career technical education. We kind of started in the federal policy place, really focusing on Perkins and supporting states in the implementation of that. And in the past couple of years have really moved into supporting state policy as well as this communications piece. We know that CTE has come a long way in the last couple of decades. There's some great high-quality programs all across the country. States are doing fantastic work, but there's still some catch-up for the general public, those key stakeholders such as parents and students, but also policymakers, employers, to really understand the benefit and the value of career technical education. So we've launched this 4-part series to kind of help you all think about your communications activities and strategies and how you can better communicate about CTE to key audiences in your state and in your community. A couple weeks ago, we had our first in the series, the state's role in communicating about career technical education, featuring some research we did around the messages that you should be using with parents and students to convince them to enroll in CTE programs. We also had the Idaho Career Technical Education Department featured, talking about why they really invested in CTE, what their communication strategy is, and had some great, really tangible takeaways. So if you missed that webinar, I'd certainly encourage you to check it out on our webinars page and our YouTube channel. And if you joined us for that one and are back today, thank you so much for joining us again. So I will go ahead and get started. We've got some great speakers today who are really going to talk about, you know, last webinar you heard more about kind of the broader communication strategy, and today we're going to talk about the importance of really telling your story and your state story and the story of your local programs and those success stories of employers and students and parents through the media. And so how can you make sure to engage the media as a crucial stakeholder in getting your message out? We've got 2 great speakers today. The first you're going to hear from is Paula Bowles. Since 2003, she's been the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education. She held a similar position at the 3rd largest K-12 school district in Oklahoma and worked for more than 17 years in healthcare public relations. Her first quote-unquote real job was as a reporter for the state's largest newspaper, and that appreciation for the role of the press continues today. We'll have a little question and answer session right after her presentation, and then we're going to pass it over to Gewertz. She covers pathways from high school to college or work. Since joining Education Week in 1999, she has been the lead Common Core reporter and has covered urban schools. Previously, she was a staff writer at the Los Angeles Times and the United Press International. So we are thrilled to hear them from today. You'll hear from Paula first on Oklahoma's approach to media engagement. You'll learn a little bit about their system, their communications plan and how it dovetails nicely with their strategic plan, and then how they use media as kind of a tactical strategy in getting out their messages. Then you'll hear from Catherine on how to get the press and media interested in CTE and telling that CTE story in your community. So without further introductions, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Paula. And take it away, Paula.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. I'm delighted to join everyone today to talk about engaging the media because I know since my first quote-unquote real job as a reporter, a lot has changed. And so we've had to change our strategies through the years. I know when I first took this job, we mailed out hard copy press releases. Don't do that anymore. So this is an exciting topic for me. A little bit about our system. Oklahoma Career Tech we have our own state agency that provides leadership and to all of our state for career and technology education. There are 393 K-12 school districts that we have courses in, Career Tech courses. We have 29 technology center districts with 58 campuses across the state. Oklahoma has 77 counties. We're in 72 of those 77 counties with the technology centers. We also provide training for offenders. Some of this training is done inside prison walls. Some of it's done for those on probation or in juvenile centers. So we have 16 sites where we provide training for offenders. And then a few years ago, we took over the adult basic education service in Oklahoma, which provides high school equivalency, English as a second language. And we have 31 of those providers throughout the state. Let's see. Our annual enrollments are every year it's around 500,000. This year, 550,000 enrollments. We have a little more than 2,500 teachers in our full-time offerings. 94% placement of our students, and placements divided into several categories, going on to higher ed, military, getting a job, and seeking. Then we're unique in that we provide a lot of services to businesses in Oklahoma. Around 7,000 businesses use the services of our Business and Industry Services Division. So that's a little bit about Oklahoma Career Tech. And why engage the media? Well, we've done some research through the years. No surprise, 56% of our registered voters have heard of Career Tech, but that means there's a good number that have not. And they're not fully aware of the services that we provide. We just got some new research yesterday, which verified some of the research we've been doing for the last 10 or 12 years, that people still connect with the term VOTEC and not Career Tech. We changed our name in 2000 to Career Tech from VOTEC, or vocational education. And that was such a strong brand and a strong name. It's been difficult for people to understand that we are VOTEC, but we have changed and we have expanded services throughout the years. So we, as that is confirmed, we're now looking at some more strategies to target that message. And as I said before, when I first went to work at the newspaper, I'm going to date myself, but I actually used an electric typewriter. So now we know that there are so many ways that people get their information that we have to provide those messages through multiple platforms. And, we're continually looking at new ways to reach our audiences. So what we have done is our marketing plan supports our strategic plan. And in our strategic plan, we have these three goals: enhance business and education partnerships, increase career awareness, and increase educational attainment. So those are our big strategic goals for our system. And our marketing plan aligns with that. It's pretty big. So what I've done is just list a few of the samples of what we've done in our marketing plan. But the key message for our marketing plan, and I'll back up just a little bit. In my division, I have a graphic design department. I have a communications department that does a lot of the media relations. And included in that communications department, we have somebody who just does social media. And then we have a video production department, and I have a print plant who does printing not only for us, but for other nonprofit organizations in the state. So we call ourselves Marketing Media Services. And we provide, our key message of our communications plan is to provide leadership, support, and assistance to communicate the benefits of Oklahoma Career Tech education. So That's backing up just a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. I went backward instead of forward on the slides. So here are some examples of some of the things that we have included in our marketing plan. And as I said, it's pretty big. So I just listed some of the top tools that we use. We have an online newsletter with subscriptions. Our director has a weekly memo that we have developed a list. So she sends it to other state agency heads, some presidents of universities, all the technology center superintendents, some of the key opinion leaders, legislators, that she sends that weekly memo to. Then we have a Career Tech Update, which is our internal communication piece. And we have different topic bulletins. So different areas of our department have communications tools that they communicate primarily with the instructors or employees of Technology Center education. Another big part of our plan is to highlight success stories throughout all of our media outlets, through social media, through our website, through anytime we're talking to or civic organizations. Then we have social media campaigns. One of the ones that people may be familiar with is during Career Tech Month. We have a big push. This month is Manufacturing Month, so we'll have quite a few posts in our social media outlets about the importance of manufacturing jobs. And then, of course, we do news releases, we do news alerts. Our director writes opinions, or we have content experts writing opinion editorials. So those are a few of the tools that we, I'm sorry, I keep going backwards. I'm going to get this eventually. And here are some other media approaches. We have a monthly column in our local newspaper. One of the ways that we have had a struggle with is connecting with those that provide career tech services in K-12 schools. So we've used our CTSO members and because we have about 85,000 CTSO or career tech student organization members in our state. I already talked about the theme, social media campaigns. We try to meet with our largest newspapers on editorial boards. And the last thing I listed was we have a statewide effort with all of the technology centers. It's kind of a consortium with our department and the technology centers and our association, because the power of our resources put together is much greater than any one of us can do alone. So we come together and have supported quite a bit of advertising, paid advertising, through our statewide marketing campaign. The monthly column I mentioned is repurposed and shared throughout the state. So we send it out to our the 29 technology centers. They can repurpose that in any way they want. We've tried to get more exposure in the state's largest newspaper, and that's really happened because of a relationship we've had with a few of the reporters that cover education. And our social media shares have increased through our efforts. So that's my presentation. I know it was pretty quick, but like I said, we're constantly looking at new avenues to reach our target audiences. And one of the things that I will bring out is this research we've done throughout the years, and this very new research. I just heard about it yesterday. When people have an experience with career and technology education, they're highly likely to recommend it. They have a great appreciation for it. They're big advocates for career and technology education. If they don't have an experience with it, they're pretty neutral. We don't have a lot of distractors, but they're pretty neutral. So how do we get them to become advocates when they haven't had an experience with career and technology education? That's a challenge we are constantly working on. And the challenge of the changing from VOTech to career tech and what we now offer for people of all ages in our state. So with that, I'll be quiet and we can hear from our next presenter.
Great. We actually have a couple of questions for you. Our first, and great presentation, by the way, but our first is, when you highlight success stories through all media outlets, which media outlet would you say is the most successful and best use of your time and or money?
Probably our social media, because number one, it's unless we pay to boost our post, it's and even if we do, it's fairly inexpensive. So we've developed followers throughout our system who will share that. In fact, some of them have shared it with other media outlets, and then they contact us, and then there's a story that might be included in a magazine or newspaper. So I think that's probably the most successful.
Great. Our next question is, in our last webinar, which I mentioned earlier, we heard from Idaho, which really was targeting parents and students and getting them kind of more familiar with, engaged around career technical education. If you guys are targeting parents, do you target parents for one? And if so, how do you do that?
That's a great question. We do, and a lot of it is done through our technology centers and through our educators in the K-12 schools, because we have 393 K-12 school districts. Many of those school districts do not have public relations professionals. So we try to use our instructors. We try to use the technology centers who partner with the K-12 school districts to work with parents and students. Many of the technology centers have parent and student nights, and they have career fairs at their technology centers, so they invite the parents and students to those technology centers. And the other way I mentioned was through our CTSOs. We work very closely with our CTSO advisors, and every time they have a conference, we're usually there to help promote that and to make the connection that because they're in a career tech student organization, it's a co-curricular organization that's tied to a career tech course.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to type them in the chat box to the right. I do wonder if you could give some, so I know that you have a quite robust communications and marketing department, and I think that's pretty unique for a lot of states. So I know we have a couple of states on the line that may come from much smaller departments, maybe have one part-time communications professional or full-time. Where would you say, if they're kind of starting from scratch in terms of engaging the media and kind of getting press interest in their story, what would you say what's one thing they should do tomorrow to kind of approach this avenue?
I think probably the most important thing that you can do in engaging the media is to develop a relationship with those media representatives you want to use your information. Because I was a one-person shop at one time, and that was the first thing I did was meet with those people, let them know who I was, let them know some of our priorities at our school district, and really develop that relationship with those media representatives and become a trusted source for information. That's one of the ways we really increased our exposure in our largest state newspaper is we have found a couple of reporters that we can provide really great content, and in fact, sometimes when they're really looking for stories, they'll call us and say, "Do you have anything?" Which is really quite nice.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to hand it over to Catherine next. Let me go ahead and get you set up. Thank you, Paula. And if you think of any questions for Paula or Catherine or Advanced CTE while you're on the call or the webinar, feel free to just type them in the chat box right on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to Catherine.
Thanks, Katie, and great presentation, Paula, and hello to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. I'm Catherine Gewertz. I've been a reporter at EdWeek for 19 years, and for a lot of those years, off and on, have covered issues concerning the transition from high school to college or work. And in that vein, I've written a lot about career and tech ed, especially in the last few years. So I want to just tell you from our perspective what makes a good pitch. Keeping in mind that EdWeek is sort of a unique animal. We are a national publication, so we look for certain kinds of things that maybe regional news outlets would have somewhat of a different idea of what is appealing news to them. So that's one thing I would offer you, is just your state and regional outlets might be looking for something different than what national outlets are looking for. So depending on whose attention you're trying to attract, those are different conversations. I think for a lot of the state and regional media, I've worked for organizations like that, and I know that one of the most appealing things is a connection to your area. So if there's a program in the county that you cover or the city you cover, that especially if that program exemplifies an important state or national trend, that's a great angle to offer to reporters. For us at EdWeek, we look for stories that signify something larger, a trend or a controversy. For instance, from our place nationally, we're interested in anything that might build the jobs pipeline in a high-demand sector of the economy. We're interested in stories about exactly what Katie mentioned and what Paula mentioned, which is that transition from the idea of old voc ed to the new age career tech ed, rigorous higher tech models of program that really try to keep the needs of the job market in mind. That's a major transition, and in my reading of a lot of CTE stories in state and local media, I don't think that angle comes across clearly enough. I think there's a lot of interested in, oh, good photos, kids are up on their feet, they're doing interesting things, they're welding, but they don't go, in my mind, deep enough to really convey that significant shift from what voc ed used to be to what it's becoming. So that's something you might want to engage reporters in when you talk about it. Like, this is a whole lot more important than just good photos of what kids are doing. There's a serious educational content issue here that's shifting. Any programs that have an outstanding track record, good quality, any programs that address this old hangover issue of equity and tracking, EdWeek is interested in, and I'm guessing local media would be interested in too. The way we used to think about it is hampered by some of the bad things that happened with tracking kids. And there's a very conscious effort to address those issues. So that's significant from a news perspective. Lighthearted stories, good photos and video are always appealing. And if that's, on the local level, EdWeek, we pretty much pass that stuff up. But a lot of local and state outlets will be interested in these kinds of things. And if you have that to offer, that's worth keeping in mind when you speak to them. I was practically clapping when Paula said build relationships, and I thought, there's a bullet point in my presentation about that.
Yay!
This is the single most important thing I want to tell anyone who ever works with the news media, but it takes time. To build relationships with us when there is no story. I can't tell you how many times I've had to develop expertise on a new beat. I call it the stupid year. I've got a new beat to cover. I don't understand it very well. Or it's a complicated technical beat like assessment. And I spend so much time on the phone with sources saying, I'm stupid. Would you explain this to me? Why is this significant? Why should I write about this? How can I explain this to an audience in a way that they can access it because what you do is super technical? And I then learn who are people who can explain things well to me, who can explain things well through me to my readers. And when sources call me and say, can I just talk to you off the record for a while? I have a story I think you'd be interested in, and here's why. It's just really, really helpful to get me to understand it, and then I can explain it to readers. So when you call us on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. and just say, can we chat for a while? I have something in mind. I don't know quite what it is yet, but I want to talk it through with you. That is so valuable. We get to know you as a source. We get to know the work. Also, talking about Tuesday at 11 a.m., notice. When you call us ahead of time on an innocent Tuesday at 10 a.m. to say next week we think something important is happening and we want to know, we are so busy and so maxed out all the time that this allows us to schedule doing this story. Literally, I have been able to tell an editor, I can't do that story you're suggesting because I've got this other thing coming that I know is happening. And then she'll give that story to somebody else. Leave me free. That's the sausage making of the news business. That's important to know. Give us notice. Give us stuff in advance so we can look at the materials and understand it before we write about it. It's a much smarter, deeper story when we can prepare. So all of that about notice and heads up. Embargoed information is related to that too, and that goes back to the first bullet point. If I've worked with you and I trust you, and if you've worked with me and you trust me, then we can work together to give me information ahead of time. Say you're going to release a 3-year overview of the Career Tech Ed program you've been running in your state. There's a lot of data in there. There are things in there that reporters will probably want to get comment on from people in the programs or parents. Give us time to do that and write a really smart story. Give it to us a week ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time with an embargo. You'll get a much better story, and our readers will get a much better story out of that. So once again, just what Ed Week looks for, anything that has national significance. We can tell a local story. We can go to a small town in Oklahoma, as I have done when I've covered career and tech ed. I've been to small places in Arkansas and Tennessee and tiny places in New Jersey because what's going on there tells a big story about trends nationally. I call that telling the big story with the small story. So if you want to pitch something going on in your area to national media, that's the pitch. That's a powerful pitch that they will get. What's going on in my town is important nationally because it illustrates a controversy or a trend, and we can show you how we're working on that. A policy connection, anything that affects the local debate on your local school board, at the state level, in your state legislature. Are they talking about how to fund career and tech ed? Does someone have an innovative funding mechanism? Because there's something in journalism called the nut graph. That's the meaty paragraph high up that says, here's why it matters that this story is happening. These things happen just as your state legislature is debating how to fund career and tech ed. But this program in XYZ, Oklahoma, illustrates how it can be done. Any connection to policy making or debating and controversy is a great hook for a reporter. So that's what I have to say. Here's my contact information if you ever want to reach out to us with a story, or if you just want to talk more about engaging the media, here's where you can find me. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks so much, Catherine. If you have any questions for Catherine or Paula, feel free to write them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Oh, there you go, thank you. I wanted to ask if you have any big don'ts of engaging the media. We talked a lot about what you should do. Is there anything that you absolutely shouldn't do?
I can jump in on that, and Paula may have some thoughts too. I can speak for Ed Week. For me, the don'ts are one-way communication. To send me something just in my inbox, it's very unlikely that I'm going to pick up on that. I get 183,000 things in my inbox every week, and most of them, from our perspective at Ed Week, tend to be kind of the cheerleadery, here's great photos and videos kind of coverage, or we're going to have a celebration of a certain thing. That's just not up our alley. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just not what we do. So for Ed Week, a press release about a celebration isn't usually going to get my attention. Also, don't send me a pitch that has nothing to do with education or my beat, which surprisingly I get a lot of.
Well, and as a state agency, we get a lot of open records requests from media. And there are certain laws surrounding it. We certainly abide by all of that, but I will do my dead level darndest to accommodate those requests. And some of them are very, very involved or very complicated, but I will communicate with reporters and say, I can have that information to you and give them the time frame. Or if you want to narrow your search, you can have the information a little bit quicker, but I will keep them informed of my progress in providing that open records request. That has seemed to help with this relationship building, because they know that I'm going to shoot straight with them, and I'm going to provide the information they need as timely as I can. So that's one way I help. Now on the flip side, I'm as a former reporter, I don't speak off the record. I just don't do that. And we've had some controversial things happen, and I just stick to the facts. Now, I will provide content experts for media, so I'm not always the spokesperson. If they want to talk to content experts, I help try to facilitate that, because if I know these people, sometimes I can get to them and get back to the reporter quicker. So that's a little bit different than what Catherine was talking about, because working with a daily newspaper that has daily deadlines, I try to be very respectful of that. Not always can we meet their deadlines, but we try to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat box to the right-hand side of your screen, or the Q&A box. There's two boxes you can type them in. I think another suggestion, too, is if you're looking for what a paper might be interested in and you're kind of starting from scratch, building those relationships is so important, but I also know, for example, that Education Week and a lot of papers have an editorial calendar that you can kind of take a look at and see if you have anything to pitch throughout the year, if you can anchor anything. Do you have any tips on kind of this is getting into the nitty-gritty, but like the format of a pitch? Of course, you want to get the information at least a couple days beforehand, but is there anything else that you'd want them to make sure to include when they're pitching you a story, or you're pitching a story, Paula, to both of you?
Well, and we do alerts a lot. Here's an alert, this is coming up, and it's just the basic information of the who, what, where, when, why, and always include our contact information and contact information in various formats. The media, they all have my cell phone. They all can, of course, we have they have my email address. So I'm accessible, and I think that helps, because my work schedule is not always their work schedule.
Yeah, that's because we have awful work schedules. So in terms of a format, I would suggest a lot of what Paula said, but in addition, keeping it short. Like, if you can avoid making me read more than one page, that would be wonderful, because I'm trying to keep up with so much email and so many pitches every day. But including, tell me what's happening, tell me what you think I might want to attend to, but tell me why you think it's significant, why this matters. That would be helpful. Like, I get a lot of pitches about, celebrating the third anniversary of a program. Okay, why is the anniversary significant? Because locally that might be of interest. Like, wow, we've had this local program, but nationally for us, not so much. So if you're going to pitch to us on the national level, I think we would need a sense of any help you can offer us on why this story is important nationally would be helpful.
You know, another point, because video, we really have a focus on providing short video content on our social media sites and on our website and to our student groups. And we will offer B-roll to broadcast media. We will offer, we'll offer to actually provide the video, and we're fortunate that we have that source. But that's another thing that I know Catherine said they're so busy, and so the more information that we can provide, the better help we can be as far as making their job easier. But, you know, it all comes down to providing good content.
Great. Well, that is all of our questions for today. I want to thank both of you so much for these great presentations. I know Nicole and I have learned a lot. And I want to encourage everyone who's on the line right now. Catherine wrote some fantastic article, the whole series on CTE that really demonstrated at the local, state, and national level kind of where CTE is today, some challenges we're facing, and some opportunities we have. And so if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, it's a great series. There's also video included. And then Oklahoma social media is something that we always go to. Their videos are fantastic, and they have some just wonderful student stories. And I know you mentioned CTE Month and do a big push around CTE Month. We're always looking at that. But I want to thank both Catherine and Paula so much for joining us today and giving us some strategies around media engagement. I know this has been very helpful, and Catherine put in the chat box a link to the series, and we'll make sure to send that to all participants as well. So thank you both again. I want to encourage you guys to save the date. We've got 2 more webinars coming up in this series. One will be right after the election. We're kind of figuring out a date for that right now on kind of advocating for CTE after the election. We know that there's a ton of races at the state and local level, and so there's going to be a lot of work in helping local and state policymakers and leaders and legislators really understand the benefits of CTE as that turnover happens and why they should make CTE a priority. We'll also have one in December that Nicole will be leading on how to use social media in your communications efforts. We'll feature Maryland Department of Education, which has done a lot of work around social media in the last year or so, and you'll get some strategies on how to engage in social media. So save the dates. We've been recording this webinar, and so we'll have it up on our webinars page and on our YouTube page. I know the recording, a couple of you wrote, if you were on the last webinar, was a little wonky on the YouTube page, so we'll get that fixed up from the past webinar, then we'll get this one uploaded. You'll also be able to see the PowerPoint as a PDF as well. So thank you all again for attending. We appreciate it, and thank you to Paula and Catherine so much for your expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, have a good day.